And hello and welcome to AleksConnects Sandbox, and this is a creative one. This is Tony, my name is Alex, and let's continue studying, or should I say, revisiting fundamentals by focusing on simplification still. So, oh snap, this is a lot. So let me make sure that camera is going to work properly. So, yeah. Again, constantly forgetting to do this before the stream. This is something that is super annoying. Usually I kind of have to do this, and this, and this, and make sure that it will stop lagging. So now it's fine, works, good. So yeah, we're continuing with fundamentals, with revisiting fundamentals. Okay, music is too loud for me. I need to go like probably 10. Okay, so today's session again is a continuation of the series of sessions that we are kind of sticking to for now. Ideally, I would want to draw something personal, but until I will revisit all fundamentals during the streams, I decided not to draw anything during the streams, and instead I'm drawing stuff outside of the streams, or at least trying to if I have time. But usually, like for now, I'm going to stay away from drawing and painting something during the streams, and instead during the streams we're basically going to study stuff. So basically the streams for now are going to be kind of educational. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, let's just start and go. So everything is working, so yeah, continue. So in the previous session, we kind of like worked a little bit on this area, on the clavicles. No, this is a scapula. So again, I'm going to mix them up. So scapulas and connection of the scapula and the clavicles and this shoulder bone. So basically, we'll continue to do exactly that, I guess. There's not going to be anything special today. Again, we might kind of draw a ribcage, or at least try to draw a ribcage quite a lot in order to know how exactly it's going to work. So let's just start without further ado. There's no reason to hold. I don't want to talk today that much, personally, so kinda not feeling like it. It's probably too... Ooh, yeah, it's probably going to be a little bit closer. I'm going to see less. I'm trying to draw scapula on the other side of the ribcage, so it's definitely not an easy one. Because when you're drawing something that you're not seeing, it's always a challenge. We're not going to see this part. Now let's keep it at that. So again, this session is going to be relatively, like, probably short. I don't know, it all depends what we need to do. So either this session is going to be a regular 2-hour session, or it might actually go in less than 2 hours. There is a good possibility, because again, lately there's so many stuff to do before the new year that it's just, sometimes I just basically don't have time on streams. And usually this time is kind of free, but again, today I didn't manage to go through stuff that I needed to go through, so after the stream I kind of had to do that, so because of this there could be a good possibility that we're actually going to end the session a little bit earlier, but it all will depend. And I already talked about the fact like why I don't want to make big sessions. Like personally for me, big sessions like 4 hours or more are kind of pointless if you don't have an audience. Like I mean, if you will get an audience, maybe then it's a good idea to make your streams longer, but for the audience specifically, but considering that streams are not my primary thing, so I'm another full-time streamer, although there is a kind of a weird distinctions between people, like what is the full-time streamer? I mean, are you a full-time streamer if you stream like more than 10 hours a week? Maybe, yes, you might be a full-time streamer if I actually will stream more than 10 hours a week, and I definitely sure that I'm streaming more than 2 to 10 hours a week. I at least streaming 4 hours of creative in a regular schedule, but usually it's much more. Okay, so what I'm doing at this particular point is working from my mind. So I mean, as I said before, I drew skeleton for a long time, and yes, I needed basically to revisit how skeleton looks. Sometimes if I will forget something, I will use a Proco kind of ref with the skeleton. Of course, we could use any type of reference, but again, I think that this reference is just it was just the closest thing that I had and the easiest thing to find. The rest is just like in the books, and it's not necessarily convenient to take the information from the book, and it's definitely not like, well, there's probably not that many books that actually have this information, like everything that we need. Scapulas from almost all angles, clavicles, and 2 different type of pelvises, and understanding of the rib cage quicker and the proportions of those, because one of the main things in terms of the skeleton to think about is of course proportions, because proportions will make the skeleton look a little bit more close to the human. Although I'm not focusing on proportions yet, like my main idea here is to just basically know how to simplify them. But yeah, again, by the way, as a reminder, because again, for those who actually will look at this video and like not going to figure out what exactly I'm doing, just like for the new people, what I'm doing is just basically trying to simplify how we could solve problems on a brainstorming stage, by using simplification, because usually creating an art or any type of artwork goes with a lot of stages, and most of the stages that we're going through are kind of a brainstorming stages when we're trying to get the idea in our mind first, by experiencing something and okay, my brain is dead. And basically, yeah, experiencing something and getting inspired. Once we get inspired, now we have an idea in our mind, and now we need to take this idea and turn it into an actual work. And here is the problem lies, because usually, like again, we're going to talk about it when we're going to create our own project. We kind of started to talk about it when I started to work on portraits. We tried to analyze how to approach a portrait creation, illustration creation. All these streams are available on YouTube at AleksConnects, so go visit that if you're interested. So all archives are there. They're quite long, especially the first one, when we basically broke down all fundamentals. We talked about all fundamentals step by step and tried to combine them together. Again, information in streams is super raw, so it's not in any way like a super professionally, no, put together information. It's definitely chaotic in some way, if you will look at this, but for me it's not chaotic because again I have my own understanding on this, and I'm trying to basically get this understanding out there for those who might need it. There again, you never know what information could basically trigger something in your brain and make you say, okay, this is something that I didn't knew, now I know it, which is pretty cool. So again, I'm just doing this like for myself, and if it will work for others, then it's fine. So it's a lot of work, but eventually I make myself a better artist by doing so, which I'm truly kind of believe in. And one of the most important things for the artist is to believe in himself, or herself. So we have to believe in ourselves in order to proceed. And how I personally managing this element of believing in myself is by working on theory and basically on understanding. The more I understand the topic or the subject that I'm working with, the better, the more confidence I will gain, and in results, potentially I will be more competent as an artist. So again, there's a lot of things goes to it. So again, the previous stream we kind of again we found a way to simplify pelvis, which just kind of works. I mean, it's not that it's not that complex as the actual pelvis itself, because again, if we're going to go with the pelvic bone, it's actually quite complex. It's pretty hard to truly simplify it by using basic primitives or even modified operations with the basic primitives. Again, here they are, extended operations with the basic primitives, Boolean operations, and etc. So the whole idea of simplification, getting back to what I started to talk about, the whole idea of the simplification is to find a way to basically take this basic knowledge, which all artists should have, is understanding how to create a cube, how to create a cylinder, how to create a sphere. By knowing how to create a cube and by knowing how to create a cylinder from the cube and sphere from the cube, we will be able to then apply a simplistic limited operations by moving edges or scaling them, planes and points, and that way we will be able to achieve a simple results, and of course a little bit more complex results when it comes down to Boolean operations. So what I did for the pelvic bone is basically I found a way to simplify it using all these methods and of simplification to the best of my ability. And once I will learn how to work with this and draw it from multiple angles, we already tried to do that, which actually looks pretty fine. So I actually truly understand how it looks in space, how it rotates in space, which means that I will be able to draw this from multiple angles. I definitely will probably have troubles from drawing it from certain angles, so it doesn't mean that if I know this, that means that I'm going to draw it from all angles possible. I still need practice when it comes down to the simplification, but still we kind of tried it from multiple angles and it kind of works. I mean, one of the things that we tried to come up with is with the extension of this part that basically connects to this bone. We're not going to work with names for the bones. I truly don't want to do this yet. We're not necessarily working on the anatomy itself. We're working on simplification. So for us, knowing how what is the bone name is not necessarily important. The visual part is here is a little bit more important. Yeah. So again, the whole idea is to basically simplify every part of the bone in the human body to a basic primitives, or at least use a certain method that we already established before and applied in this simplification. So for instance, again, if we're going to take a spinal cord, with just basically visioning it as a wired cylinder, and we're basically using this wired cylinder as the guide. Like, if you know how to draw a wired cylinder, then you will be able to know how to create a this thing. Yeah, my English today is pretty weird. yeah, lately, by the way, I'm streaming less English sessions. Again, unfortunately, there's too much competition in English realm of streaming, and unfortunately, I have nothing to gain out of those streams, so zero viewers usually, and it's kind of disappointing. I streamed for English audience for a year, and it didn't work, so now I'm slowly shifting to the Russian audience a little bit more. I don't want to completely remove English streams because most of my content in the future is going to be created in English, so especially when I actually will start to work on my YouTube channel, AleksConnects, because I had like big plans on for that. It's going to be in most cases in English, so because of this I still will keep English streams occasionally, but again, for now it's going to be less, unfortunately. So outside of the streams, like outside of the schedule, we're going to stream a lot of Russian streams, creative and magic ones, and of course for English streams are going to be only 2 per week. It will probably change the more audience will basically know about my streams from all around the world. Maybe then I will change something and adapt. But again, even when I'm streaming Russian streams, I still open them for English too. The same goes for English streams. Again, this thing out there basically says that this stream is English, but you can write me in Russian and I basically will switch to Russian. The same goes for Russian streams. So I'm not necessarily like separating them completely. The only separation that I have in my channel is kind of created by design, unfortunately. I can't change that much. So it's magic streams, because I have separate seasons. So for instance, Russian seasons for Magic MTG study, there's only 2nd season out there, but because I started it not that long ago. And English streams for Magic study, MTG study, are like 120 plus sessions already. Probably not, yes, still not, but still pretty close. And because of this complete difference, like there's like 5th season in English Magic streams, and in Russian streams there's only a 2nd season, I can't tie them together. So unfortunately for those, they kind of will be separated, and which is kind of actually for the best, because we have a game, we have a change of the language in the game, and it's a little bit easier to kind of adapt to it. So yeah, kind of that. So yeah, let's just go and continue to draw. So again, I will approach everything in terms of the simplification. I don't want to work with gesture only. I already talked about it in the previous streams, like, but the fact that I don't see gesture as a efficient way to learn. The only reason for me why gesture is not efficient way to learn, like not the only way to learn, I would say that. So it has its efficiency, but if it's just a naked version of the gesture, when you just basically taking the figure and trying to figure out its dynamic, it's not necessarily gives you that much. I mean, yes, your figures, the more you will repeat this process, will become a little bit more dynamic, but the problem with this, there still needs to be some type of a logical explanation how exactly this gesture could be manipulated. And for me personally, this is the reason why I decided to take a skeleton as a kind of a, I don't know, and turn it into a gesture somehow. So we're not just learning to simplify anatomy first from the skeleton just because I want that. No, I made this decision specifically for the purpose of integrating a gesture into the skeleton. So, because again, one of the things that helps us to understand gesture when it comes down to the skeleton is the behavior of the skeleton itself. So if we're going to take the S-curve of the spine, we already see some type of a dynamic here. So for instance, right here, if we're going to take a spinal cord, and we actually will know how exactly it's placed in this particular position, we already will have certain dynamic to it. And this is the way for me to work with gesture mindlessly, or the opposite, using your mind, basically utilizing your mind instead of just working it mindlessly. I guess mindlessly is the opposite of using your mind, yeah, if I'm not mistaken. So either way, so again, we have a dynamic here, and this dynamic is definitely will be represented better if we will understand how the spinal cord is actually placed here. We will get there. It's not an easy thing to do because the spinal cord is changing a lot depending on the position, and sometimes it's just easier to picture just a regular line in the gesture. This is the point. The whole point of the gesture is the simplification. But again, for me, if I will implement into this something that has basic primitives in it, but still could be connected with the gesture, it could be a little bit more efficient, because now instead of just drawing weird irregular lines that show me the dynamic, like drawing a stick figure, instead of drawing a stick figure that not necessarily will help me to learn anatomy or whatever, instead I will repeat not just by just lines, but actually a skeleton by using irregular primitives. So again, this is again, hopefully I explained it well, but again, I have my own understanding of this, and if I'm not being able to explain it, it's just because of the language barrier, or because I'm trying to explain to a wide range of audience, when in reality the only person that will understand why you're doing what you're doing is you. No one ever is going to understand why you're doing what you're doing. So because of this, I kind of understand that I'm probably not going to be able to reach every person with this information, and not everyone will completely understand why I'm doing this. Some of you probably will find it completely irrelevant or pointless, and it's completely fine. But for some of you, for those of you who will find this helpful, this is going to be awesome, because then my work, it's just not going to be done for me personally, but actually will extend past that, which is pretty cool. Either way, so yeah. By the way, I completely drew it wrong way. Let's just redraw it, because usually clavicles are in here. Again, the placement of this is completely wrong. It needs to be a much higher. So it's probably this one. The whole thing is going to be higher. Because we see any clavicle here already. It's probably not going to be that crazy. Just a little bit. And again, there's no way to do, no wrong way to draw clavicles, because it all depends on the person. I mean, every person has a little bit differently shaped clavicles. They have a similar kind of structure to them. Again, from one side it starts that way, and then it basically goes that way. So it's kind of like an S curve, but not finished one, like with pretty small dynamic, or weak, I would say, dynamic. Again, this is our big dynamic S curve, and this is basically a barely noticeable dynamic, because yeah, of course we have C curve, S curve. These curves are the main curves that we're using in anatomy to showcase most of the forms. Either way, so let's just continue. So yeah, I completely understand that not everyone is going to understand what I'm doing, but again, in time, everything will make sense. Like, if things are not making sense now, they will. Because once I will start to apply everything into my work, people will start to notice how what I'm doing here benefits my work. And it's all about that, truly. I will let Slight turn in here. She's probably kind of completely uses side view here, but I kind of want to turn her a little bit to actually showcase the rib cage, not just draw it from the side view only. kind of want to rotate it a little bit. Okay then, so where is our rib cage? So with the rib cage again, we need to draw it for a lot of time before we'll manage to work with it properly. So okay, so what rib cage? So how I'm approaching the rib cage, or at least I'm deciding to approach rib cage for now. So the approach is very simple. So first thing that we're drawing is kind of a blade here, and this is in most cases how rib cage is explained in books, even like a blade with a handle. So first thing that we're drawing is basically a blade with the handle. Imagining this handle as kind of a semi-cylindrical form, so it has a little bit of a curvature here, so it's not just straight or whatever. Again, applying form line. So one of the things that I'm still kind of questioning is this area. Like, should it actually should it be straight or not? So ideally, if we're actually going to look at the skeleton, it's kind of straight. So even if you will take your rib cage, it's not going just right away like this. So the rib cage is kind of flat. It's even kind of concaved a little bit, or convex. No, concave. It's there, and convex is this. Let's check this out again. Concave. Yep, concave is basically this, and convex is this. When there's a rising, and concave is this. Good thing that I'm able to break my fingers to show you that. So why not? It's a good way to indicate certain thing without a problem. So what I talked about, yeah, I'm a little bit unfocused today, so sorry in advance. I'm pretty disorganized in my mind at this particular point, so I might made a lot of weird mistakes, etc, etc. So to this cylinder, kind of a version of the cylinder, we have a connection of the closed wired cylinder. So this is a wire for the cylinder. This is our one of the ribs, the top one, creating a connection ellipsis and then just basically connecting them together. In time, it's going to be a little bit faster. Like for now, it's probably will take some time to draw this. And if we're going to talk about the sketch and the brainstorming stages, because again, one of the main reasons why I want to do this is to make sure that I will have something to work with on the brainstorming stages. And the main idea of the brainstorming stage is to go through things a little bit quicker. And it's not necessarily going to be quick if we're going to draw this. But again, I will find a way to further simplify it. So maybe later I'm not going to draw the actual cylinder. I might simplify it like this by just drawing a simple line and not actually creating a thickness for it. So again, this is something that we could this is something that we can get away with on the later stages, once we will have a little bit more experience to basically save time. But in terms of the analysis, it's actually better for you to understand how the actual form works here. So yeah, I'm imagining this part, it's actually flat. But to make it a little bit more interesting, because we have a kind of a cut corner here, I decided to create those transitional lines. That might give us information where the ribs are actually facing. Although we're probably not going to use this information because again, I don't want to I don't have an intent to draw every freaking rib it's not important in here. It's important to just find a way to simplify and understand where the form lines are going, and these lines are not. They are here for the purpose of showing the form lines. But again, this thing is straight. It's just probably something that we could indicate better, because if it's a form lines, that there probably should be just straight, not to create confusion, because this thing is definitely creates a confusion. Like, and the fact that I know that it's straight, it's not necessarily tells that. So let's just go with the form lines then, make them straight. Yeah, this is a little bit better in terms of the understanding, because again, by creating this kind of a tilt, it creates the feeling like this thing goes here and then goes inside. Like the rib cage is actually kind of concave, or convex. Oh, come on, man. Convex. Okay, so this is kind of it. Let's continue. And while I'm doing this, I could just work. I could talk about feelings, like in general. My streams, I open to talk about feelings, and I actually encourage artists and people to share what they feel in terms of like the frustrations and etc. Because when you're going to do that, it's going to help you to reflect on whatever you're saying. Because one of the things that we're not doing as people usually, and this is a bad thing not to do, is we're not basically talking to ourselves in our mind in a proper way. I mean, we definitely have thoughts about what we want, what we would want, and etc. But we rarely actually have an inner dialogue, and inner dialogue is one of your best friends truly in life. It doesn't mean that you have to be crazy to go with your inner dialogue and basically talk to yourself. It's actually a normal thing that people are doing. Not everyone is like admitting this, but inner dialogue is one of the things that actually helps us to work on ourselves. So yeah, then we have this kind of, it could be actually better to draw it a little bit more straighter. But it all depends from what angle we're going to look at it. Like from the front view, it's going to be, let's just apply this here though, it could be a good idea. Yeah, we have here, and then, so yeah, inner dialogue is something that actually helps not only an artist but a person understand better why we're doing what we're doing. Because it's easy to distract ourselves, as we are we all know that this world full of distractions nowadays, there's so many distractions that people actually don't know themselves. They trying to know themselves through others, so the more they interact with others, the more potentially they will be able to understand themselves. But it's not necessarily an actual personal understanding. This is understanding through the prism of others. But the inner dialogue helps us to actually understand ourselves, in the pure selves, outside of the society. So this is kind of why I would like in my streams to talk about this subject too and topic, because it's pretty like philosophical from one standpoint topic. Not everyone is going to be ready to talk about that one, of course, especially during the chat and like during the stream, and considering the fact that all chat is actually displayed on top of me, so so you have to have courage to do that. Okay, yeah, so we have this, the same here. Then I'm imagining this thing is just a regular cylinder. It's not necessarily just a regular cylinder. By the way, before drawing a rib cage, ideally what we need to draw first is a spinal cord, because the rib cage is going to kind of connect to the spinal cord. If we don't have a spinal cord there, we're not going to be able to properly connect them. Yeah, with time I will figure out what to do first, like what to draw first, what second. But for now, I guess I will go with the current logic. Current logic might not be a perfect logic. Yeah, this thing is going to be bigger. And the hardest part is, in what I'm doing in this point, is using this, because it's one thing to do this once during the stream to basically understand how to work with it, whatever, but it's a completely different thing to actually use it when you're actually working. And this is something that most of us are disregarding once it will get to the actual work, because usually you don't have time to do that. And that's why most of the artists are actually separating studying from creating. But throughout the years, I actually tried to connect those two together. I truly still believe that there is a way to study and create at the same time. And not that this is not that this is impossible. It's actually pretty possible. I mean, if you will create a project, I guess sometimes it's automatically, or sometimes it's truly automatic. Like if you create something that you didn't create it before, you will learn and you will study. Yeah, that's completely bad. That's just bad. So the first thing that I mess up is this. So one side is lower. Again, I'm not thinking about proportions, so main thing that I'm concerned with is the form. So I will disregard the fact that it's completely wrong. Probably need to make this one a little bit closer and probably even lower. This is something that we're going to think about once we will actually apply it to the project, but even then might be enough. Just this proportional version will still give us some information that we need, because this is a brainstorming stage, or at least it's supposed to be a part of the brainstorming stage. And when we talk about the brainstorming, it's usually the less control brainstorming has, the better for the brainstorming, because the ideas could be more fresh. this is one of the reasons why I want to create an effortless system that like this. Learn it to the point of making it automatic, and then I don't have to think about this, so I just going to draw this automatically and that's it, because I drew it so many times and I have a so clear picture of this in my mind, and I don't need to constantly revisit that or spend time to analyze it. I just going to draw it. This is one of the points why I'm doing this. Sometimes you're not necessarily sure why things are working the way that they are working, or not every artist actually being able to explain why they're doing what they're doing that well. You have to truly understand yourself, and sometimes the intuition just basically takes over and you truly don't have an explanation why you think this is going to work. You just have an inner feeling that, oh yeah, it's going to work. Like, I'm not just sure about it, I'm completely convinced that it's going to work. So, and when you have this conviction that this is going to work, you will make it work. It's just a matter of time. And I'm trying to make it simple, but it's not simple. So I will manage to draw it though, even though it's relatively complex, but still I would want to make it less complex. As I said before, one of the things that basically leads me to a certain level of frustration when I'm working with this is finding a balance between too simple and too complex. Because a part of me wants to make things as simple as possible in order for them to repeat this simplicity, because the more simple thing is, the easier to repeat it. But at the same time, I know that if I'm going to simplify it too much, I will lose dynamic. And for me, dynamic is one of the most important things on the early stages of the work. Because if we're going to lose dynamic, the work is just not going to have the emotion on early stages. Because the only way to implement emotion in the early stages of the work is implement dynamic. And if you lose dynamic in early stages, and it's a pretty easy thing to do, because we're working with simple things like cubes, cylinders, and whatever, so we're pretty quickly starting to lose dynamic. But with this, although this thing created from a simple primitives, it still has dynamic of certain level. It's not like 100% the dynamic as the human body, but still it's close. It's close in its dynamic. Even this pelvis, it looks dynamic, and the reason why it looks dynamic is because I took a regular primitive and added a certain level of complexity to it. Took anatomy, the actual anatomy, the whole complexity of the anatomy, found something that is super simple, like a regular cylinder or combination of cylinders, and then found something in between. So basically, you're getting something super complex from one side, you're getting something complex from the other side, or simple from the other side. So again, complex, simple, and you're trying to find the perfect balance. And for me, I still didn't find this perfect balance. So this is and one of the reasons why I'm working with the skeleton first and not simplifying the actual form, like the cylinders here or whatever, because I want to analyze the underlying anatomy, not just what's on the top. We talked about it here. So every time that we're working with softs, again, we have non-organic hybrids and organic hybrids, and also drapery. With organic hybrids and non-organic hybrids, it's a good example for non-organic hybrids. So usually most of the non-organic hybrids, such as furniture accessories such as pillows and all soft things, toys, soft toys, the only way to analyze how to operate within this realm of subjects is to understand that they have an outside, so a fabric from which they are created, and they have some type of a stuffing inside of them. And one of the things that makes it dynamic and work realistically, adds this element of believability, is the understanding that every soft has a static relaxed state, functional deformation state, and in some cases extreme deformation state. And using those three eventually will help us to understand how to operate it. So again, having a organic and with organic hybrids it's kind of the same. Using the same method, non-organic hybrids have fabric and some type of stuffing, so outside and inside. The same goes for the anatomy. We will understand anatomy better if we will understand what's on top of it, like the outside, which is again skin and whatever, and hair. But without understanding what's underneath, our work is definitely not going to look dynamic, especially when it comes down to the functional deformation, because almost every artist probably will learn how to draw a static body, because we're drawing anatomy from the references, so we have it usually in static positions like this, and this is fine. But once we will get into the dynamic situations, we're not going to be able to control it. And the only way for me personally to control the functional deformation for instance, human body, is to understand the skeleton, because the places where we're not going to see skeleton, this is the place where functional deformation is going to happen. So basically, skeleton will help us to understand the behavior of soft parts of the body which will functionally deform. So for instance, if she's going to sit on a stool or chair, this part of the leg is going to deform pretty strongly, in a pretty crazy way. And to explain it, it's going to be a little bit easier for us to explain this behavior if we will know that, okay, so the bone is placed somewhere in here. We know that this part is just going to squish. We will definitely think about the preserved value. So everything has not the volume. Yeah, my English today is super bad. Sorry about that. So we have a volume inside of everything. So the volume will never change. It always will stay the same. So the outer shell will extend with squishing, but the volume will stay the same. So yeah, we're going to get to this once we will start to work within examples of it. It might not be clear, because we don't necessarily have the examples of the functional deformation here. I mean, we have some way of depicting functional deformation here, depending on the relaxed muscles and tense muscles, but it works a little bit different. So again, human anatomy, it's a hard topic to talk about, and we just need to find a way to attack it the only way that we will understand it. So, and if book is not giving us the information, the logical information and the logical explanation that we need, I personally usually trying to find my own way of doing this, and why not? I actually made a pretty weird kind of comparison in a previous stream, in Russian stream, to the geniuses. Take an example, like geniuses such as Tesla and, for instance, Einstein. They were regular people who asked questions and didn't accept the normality of things. They knew that there is something out there outside of our grasp, and we don't have to be afraid to ask the question. And take an example from them, like truly take example from not like completely do everything that they did. It's not necessarily a good idea sometimes to do that, but especially depending on where you live, there might be certain customs that could lead you to a lot of problems and destroy a life, which was the case in their time. But again, take an example from I guess geniuses from the standpoint of ask questions, not just wait for the right answer to be to be found by others. Try to find your own personal answer to things. Don't just accept what you know and what other people are telling you. Try to investigate yourself. And yes, it takes time, but the amount of information and the amount of kind of positive things that you will get from it is incalculable, if it's a word. So you basically can't calculate it. It's just endless possibilities. So yeah, so I guess I could go with this. So it kind of works. So again, I'm imagining this one is a cylinder, this one is a wired cylinder. This is just the two copies of the cylinder, kind of cut away. So I'm imagining like we have two cylinders here, one of them is going there, the other one is there. They're basically cut somewhere here, like cut cylinders. So this is the way that I'm picturing it. And again, if you know how to work with the basic primitive, with time you will be able to draw this too. It's actually not that hard as it looks like. I mean, you just need to, I don't know, develop some type of level of understanding first, and not rely on practice too much. I mean, if you will understand how it works in your brain, you will be able to repeat this with certain amount of practice. I don't say that practice is not important, but again, don't rely on practice only. Use your brain, because it's a freaking powerful thing to have. I mean, our freaking brain is power. We don't know all its capabilities. So yeah, and one of the things that I added separately is this thing in the last stream. It's actually a pretty complex thing. I mean, what we have over here is kind of this edge that starts here goes under, and then it basically starts to rotate, and within this rotation and we basically make it bigger, and in this rotation we have in this socket in which our cylinders will go to. There's no way to simplify it more than it already is, probably, or maybe it is though. I mean, we could just basically imagine like we have two cylinders here that could connect somewhere in the center, or we could create some type of a sphere inside and put cylinders inside of it. So there is a way, like, but like we could imagine like a sphere inside of it, and inside of the sphere we basically inserting this thing. So this is a way to like picture it too, but again, there's just too much overlapping now, and it's better to understand or work within just one form, one solid shape, and try to understand where exactly the solid shape will transform, in what way exactly to explain this behavior. This is something that it is not final. Hopefully we'll find a better way to do this, but for now let's just go with this, because again, even with the actual anatomy, this is the most unexplainable part probably. I mean, it's pretty hard to simplify it properly and clearly picture it from all multiple angles. So And again, I'm finding the thing that works for me. Don't be afraid to find your own way that will work for you. Yeah. One of the unanswerable questions, or at least the one that is going to be hard to answer definitely, is how it connects to this edge. So this thing on top needs to connect to this thing, and how exactly this connection will happen there is kind of a question. The easiest way to basically make it just straight one, a straight connection here, but I don't know. Truly don't know. Because this connection might happen here. Like the perpendicular. That's probably better. There's less distance and it's going to be a little bit easier to explain. So how it potentially could connect from the outside. So the side that we're not seeing. So this week I will try to make now I will start to make streams outside of the schedule, so basically unscheduled streams. This is going to be the first time probably that I'm going to actually implement unscheduled streams for creative. I believe we need that because lately I'm not able to stream during Sundays, so because of this I kind of wanna during the Sunday evenings. So because of this I kind of wanna make sure that we're still going to have more creative content than the gaming content, because at this particular point it's kind of gaming content is basically taking over, because it's just easier to stream, as we all know. It's something that you just launch and do and that's it, like play and whatever happens happens, just basically go in with the flow, and it not works for creative. So now this is one of the reasons why creative is so hard thing to do. So we have about like 30 minutes or so before the end of the stream probably. Again, I don't want to make stream too long because schedule for the streams will quite change during the holidays because there's going to be a lot of things to do. I need to catch up with everything that I had to do throughout this month and the previous months, because I'm definitely not sticking to the deadline that I promised to myself to stick to. It's kind of disappointing personally. So I need to catch up with everything that I made promise to myself. I know that people are coming up with the New Year's resolutions and whatever. For me personally, I have a freaking New Year resolution every week that I try to balance. I mean, and it's much better than just having a like New Year's resolution. I mean, a new month resolution sounds better and a little bit more efficient, because you want to do more, and by trying to do more than you're capable of, you still will do more than not having anything done. So again, it's a little bit straighter here, and the closer it gets there, the... Yeah, I probably should accentuate that too. So the center line will shift. For the curved, so yeah, I created a lot of resolutions of some kind from probably last year. Most of them I got done and implemented into my schedule, which is pretty cool. But there's still so many stuff to do, and I want to do everything right away. And I completely understand that I'm not going to be able to do everything at once, because you're just not going to be able to pull this all off. And again, this is one of the problems. Like, I'm freaking too ambitious sometimes for myself personally. Like, I'm getting sometimes too ambitious, and these ambitions are kind of at some point will start to hurt me, because having big ambitions is a good thing from one standpoint, from one point of view, but from the other, it's not necessarily a good thing. So it has its positives and negatives. In the end, it's all about balancing. By the way, am I properly displaying it? We don't see a side view, by the way, for it, so... But I still believe that it's like this, not the opposite. So, I think so. Skip-a-doo. Yeah, where are we drawing things? So again, it has curve here, curve in, and curve in. And curve out here. I believe so. If not, it's still fine, because it will help us to display the good dynamic. So, and because of this, like, usually I don't have a New Year's resolution. I'm trying to keep up with resolutions that I made promise to myself to do, or to resolve, I don't know how to properly say it, a month ago, that I set to do and still didn't manage to do everything, because there's just too much. Because right now I'm trying to juggle creative part, gaming part, and on top of that, like, there's just a lot of layers to creative part and gaming part, truly. Like, it seems like there's just two topics, but there's just too many of them. And unfortunately, one of the things that I don't like nowadays is that creative part usually suffers more than the gaming part, just because the gaming part is just easier. It's much easier to just launch a game and play it and stream it than to create something. And this is the only reason why gaming part is unfortunately lately winning. But I'm trying to shift balance towards creative, because this is something that I'm truly passionate about, so... It's of course fun to play games and learn stuff in there too. And again, I have my plans why I'm streaming certain games, like Magic the Gathering and like brain games and storytelling games. All these things have purpose, but it's still not, it still doesn't fulfill me fully. It's just a part of the things that makes me fulfilled. Skibbity ba-boom. Okay, let's see on stream, does it lags or not, like in terms of the delay. It's fine, there's not that big of a delay. Finally I found a streaming server that works perfect for my location. It's the most consistent one in most cases. It works on gaming streams and it works with creative streams too. This is the first time that I'm streaming this on this server. Like, this is a manual server. For those who don't know, every streaming goes from some... Oh, we got a follow. Thank you, Raptorment, for the follow, and very appreciated, very much appreciated. Welcome to AleksConnects, Creative Sandbox. So, yeah. If you like to text something in chat and basically talk about something, ask questions, don't hesitate to do so. Happy to chat. I'm pretty... I don't have that much of experience in chatting overall. I mean, especially in English, it's not my native language, so it's going to be quite hard. But I have to get some experience in chatting either way, so I need to start somewhere. And although it's pretty scary for me to chat with a foreign audience, it's foreign. Am I saying it properly? Foreign. But again, usually my streams are kind of bilingual, Russian and English. English streams help me to learn English a little bit better, because before that I was so I was afraid to speak English. Truly, it was pretty hard for me to start to do so. Like, I understood English pretty well, but like to speak English, it was like, oh snap. And when I started streaming, this was the first time that I actually started to speak English, and it was super uncomfortable. My first streams I uploaded, of course, on my YouTube channel. All of them are there, and I started pretty badly. Now I kind of some days my English is fine, but some days I'm just not in the mood for some reason. I'm talking nonsense. Sometimes it happens. The same goes, I guess, for my native language too. Sometimes you just can't speak even your own language. There's just a day. Sometimes these days happen. Skip doobadoo. So yeah, we're trying to simplify stuff. Usually simplifying or sticking to the simplification of the human skeleton, to learn how to apply dynamic with the connect and dynamic with the gesture, because like the gesture itself doesn't seem efficient for me. But yeah, hearing your English now, it seems fine. Yeah, it's kind of, sometimes it's fine, but there are cases and points that I'm struggling with. Like, I can't, like, I have so many thoughts to express, but if I'm not able to do so, there's just like a cloud of thoughts that's just basically starting to hit each other, and I'm getting confused, and it's just hard thing to do. I'm something like I don't know. I'm pretty hectic person in terms of the thoughts. Like I have so many thoughts, like even now, and I would want to talk about everything at once, and I can't. So unfortunately, we're not able to communicate. I wish we would be able to communicate telepathically though, because it would be much more efficient. Because come on, language is not capable to translate what exactly person wants to say and like what exactly person meaning behind certain things. Like for instance, when I'm trying to explain people what I'm doing, I'm ending up over explaining myself too many times, and people are just getting confused, like what? And sometimes it happens, and it happens actually more than often, unfortunately. So it's kind of sometimes disappointing. But either way, I guess this is the way for me to getting myself, like pushing myself out of my comfort zone. Like if it wasn't for the streams, I probably would never start to speak English. I decided just in one point, okay, I want to create content in English, and of course in my language too, but still, English is a little bit more diverse language in terms of, I forgot the word, the global. The global thing. So yeah. Okay, what else we could go? I guess this part I'm feeling pretty confident about it. Again, we're going to work on the ulna and radius a little bit later, because these two bones are one of the most complex ones, because they're usually cross between each other. It's super weird. So we're going to get to them in later stages. What we can do is try to draw pelvis from a multiple angles, like especially what I'm interested in, like from the back. It's one of the views that I'm still don't have a clear picture in my mind how it looks from the back, from the 3/4 view from the back. Basically, it's not an easy thing to do. Okay. And one of the things that I truly want to do too is learn how to simplify the face too, because again, I already talked about the simplification of the face and the fact that simplifying face is usually not a good idea, because this is one of the most dynamic features of our body, and it has a lot of expressions, and to find a way to simplify a face is just basically almost impossible. It's always going to look blocky and dead. We need to give life to every simplified form that we're going to work with, and throughout the years I tried to come up with the mechanics of working with the human face, trying to implement Riley method here and other methods that were accessible, trying to come up with my personal method, but in the end it still didn't work. So we'll get to the face a little bit later. For now we are working with the skeleton. Yeah, we have about like we're not going to stream that much, probably like maximum 30 minutes or so, maybe 40. It all depends. Lately, again, everyone is busy. There's so many things to do, like closer to the new year. It's a pretty hectic time. There's lots of stuff needs to be done. So yeah, at least we found a difference, or at least we tried to depict a difference between men's pelvis or pelvic bone and women's pelvic bone, and it's actually kind of, if we compare them together, it's actually kind of, you could see that this is a man's and this is women's. Okay. But the rib cage, still question. Like I took a couple of cylinders and kind of modified them. So again, as I said before, I'm imagining a cylinder here, a cylinder here. They cut away with the Boolean operation, and then we have two cylinders here, but we have one cylinder on top, and somehow we're basically fusing them together within the rib cage. It's pretty complex Boolean operation though, but again, these planes are explaining how exactly it's done. we made this part a little bit more flat, because again, rib cage is relatively flat in here. It's actually, again, it's concave, whatever, convex. Come on, man. I'm constantly mixing up convex with the concave. So let me see. Convex, it's this, and concave is this. Yeah. So basically, exactly. So ideally, it's concave, a little bit concave in this area, but for the point of simplification, it's actually easier to picture it flat. So this is something that I never thought about before, because usually when I'm drawing skeleton, I'm just creating a cylinder and that's it, like the rib cage. But it's not necessarily that good of an approach, because this area is usually flat. Once we'll start to like add muscles, of course it will get a little bit more complicated. But skeleton first. So again, continuing to simplify skeleton. Again, I'm trying to find my own personal version of simplification here. Of course I could use like books, for instance, like Hampton's book has pretty clear simplification of all anatomy parts, not even like bones, every muscle. It actually breaks them down pretty well. But I just want to find my own personal way of doing this, because why use someone else's method? Especially, like, one of the reasons why I'm trying to figure out my own method is probably because not every person has the same logic. One person could look at Hampton's book and completely logically understand what's happening out there and utilize it. It's completely fine. But some could look there and don't understand what's happening at all, and for them they kind of need to find the other way, or they have to understand what Hampton is doing. So either way, I just tried to find my own version, because that way I will, I don't know, learn a little bit more efficiently. This is just like throughout the years what I personally noticed for myself, that in terms of the efficiency of learning, for me, I'm learning more efficiently when I'm trying to develop my own stuff. If I'm not just taking things as they are, but trying to come up with my own versions of them, I understand them better and quicker. And not through the repetition, but through actual understanding, which is the whole point of my method, is not to rely on repetition that much, but instead kind of combine knowledge and repetition. And since I'm a theoretical person, of course, I always will lie towards theory more than towards repetition. For practitioner, I guess it's different. Practitioners are, or practical person, it's usually will rely on repetition more than on theory. But again, this is why exactly I have an advice for all artists and non-artists, then that you have to understand yourself, you have to understand why you're doing what you're doing. Okay, let's just go with clavicle, scapulus now. Because again, getting back to scapulus, so I'm imagining scapula as a regular plane with slightly bent plane. And then we have a silhouette inside of this plane. Where's our clavicle or scapula? So yeah, then we're basically picturing the silhouette inside of the plane, repeating the silhouette, and then adding a thickness to the silhouette. And this is the way to draw a clavicle for me personally, because I just can't find another way to do that. Skibidoo. Where we are. Yeah, I'm actually starting to draw here. So yeah, we either are going to finish in about like 5 or 10 minutes, we'll see, or we will continue for another 30. We'll see. It all basically will depend on my overall feeling. I'm lately pretty burned out. Like I'm not sleeping well, and I don't have like a pre-depressional state or whatever. No, I'm actually feeling pretty fine. Just basically tired overall from too many stuff to do. When you have too many stuff to do, it's just basically tiresome. Yeah, that way scapular will be drawn pretty well. I mean, it's just basically drawing plane first, then creating within this plane, inside of this plane silhouette, applying this curvature, and then adding a thickness. This is just an easier way to draw a scapular, because I don't see other way. Again, you could look at the scapular as the cube, which is similar way to picture it as the plane and then adding a thickness, but sometimes it's just easier to work with the shapes first and then turn those shapes into a form, because sometimes it's just easier thing to do. In this particular instance, it's truly much easier thing to do, for me at least, personally. Again, ideally, clavicle will scapular will probably extend somewhere here. It's going to be definitely a little bit bigger, so it's probably a little bit wider too, because it definitely will reach somewhere here. But again, I'm not considering proportions yet. They are not important at this particular point. One thing that I am considering though is just a regular understanding how to simplify them, and kind of it. Okay. Oh snap. Yeah, one of the things, picturing this plane, we need to take this part into consideration. What's happening? Why there's a different layer? Okay. It's fine, eh? Because we're going to cut this part, so yeah, we're going to cut it. The cut is going to be much higher, much smaller here. Giving it a thickness. Creating a socket. Socket usually for the shoulder blade is going to be inside actually. So this part is probably going to be rather straight from this part, but then it's going to extend from there. So it will go basically inside. So because of this, we're not necessarily going to see where exactly it is. What? Yeah, this thing is going to be quite invisible. So, this is something similar that we actually did for the pelvic bone. Again, we extending the thickness of the scapular. We did the same to create a socket. we did the same here for the pelvis. Again, it started like under, then it extended, and then we got back to the actual regular thickness. So again, usually these streams are 2-hour streams, but I truly want to end this on that note, because I doubt that there's someone who's going to get here, because English streams are usually without audience, because no one ever going to see me in the actual standings, which is disappointing. But again, hopefully at some point, once I will start to create work, it will start to draw people into my streams. But for now, I guess I just have to take it whatever it is. And because of this, like, sometimes it's just like I kind of want to draw this, but again, there's lots of stuff that I need to do outside of it, so and I don't have that much time. So before sleep I have 2 hours only, and if I want to manage to finish in 2 hours actually, and go to sleep in a proper time and actually wake up and do stuff tomorrow, I kind of need to finish at this point, unfortunately. So I kind of want to draw actually, but again, hopefully, because I will start to get bring back, or not actually bring back, I will start to implement streams outside of the schedule. I will stream during the mornings. Maybe it's going to be a proper time for other areas. Maybe some people will actually see me that no one never going to see me during the evenings. Who knows? Again, I will try to diversify. I will try to kind of bring a little bit more audience to what I'm doing, although I completely understand that what I'm doing is pretty basic and no one wants to look at person studying something. Everyone wants to look at something at a person or artist who actually doing something in terms of the drawing and painting, when we actually drawing some type of a person. Or but again, this is just my understanding. Sometimes you just don't know what audience wants. Some audience wants charisma, some audience wants just chatting, and again, I'm constantly talking non-stop and I'm still not succeeding in getting people to my streams and having them stay. So maybe I'm just annoying, who knows? And I completely kind of, I don't know, I believe there is a possibility that I could be annoying for some people. Sometimes I could be annoying for my friends and family, and when this happens I'm aware of it. So I'm not like an inconsiderate person that doesn't know when he is wrong. So I know the time when I could become kind of annoying. But again, every person has its own its own audience, his own audience, whatever, how to properly say it. Hopefully I will find mine in time, but as long as I'm trying and making things and doing things, I guess I'm fine. I don't have troubles with it. I'm learning, I'm growing personally. If the things that I'm doing will help others to grow, I will be even more happy. In the end, we all have to do what makes us happy first, and then try to help others with the extra level of happiness, and give this happiness to others somehow. So it's all about balancing. Yeah, this area is actually created by the muscle. So the actual scapular probably stops somewhere here, but this area is just a wedge. Yeah, that's it I guess for today. Again, I would wish like that we could draw more, but in most cases what I did today is just basically make all the things that we already established a little bit stronger and a little bit more concrete. Hopefully with time we'll continue to do that. So yeah, unfortunately we have to finish for today. Again, I would want to continue, but there's a lot of things to do still, and there's not much time in the day to actually manage to go over everything. So I guess on that note we'll end the session. Thank you for watching, thank you for being here, have a nice day or night, and see you in the next session. Bye, 20 cents by 2, and whop.